Yo, guess what? George Washington was invincible. Well, at least for one day in history he was. Early Americans whispered that our first president was absolutely invincible, unkillable. Although they called him the bulletproof man long before he ever accepted the presidency. And the craziest part of this story is that a native chieftain once traveled miles just to tell him to his face that his survival defied human explanation. Now stay with me because this is one of the wildest stories from the early life of George Washington, and it begins in a battle he never should have survived. Hi, I'm Chris, and I bring you the stories that change the way you think about pretty much everything. What other history mysteries would you like me to uncover? Let me know in the comments. It's the year 1755, well before the American Revolution. George Washington, he's only 23 years old at the time, and he's a volunteer officer during the French and Indian War. Now, he's riding with General Braddock's army as they push into the wilderness near the forks of the Ohio River. Then, all hell breaks loose. They march straight into one of the most devastating ambushes in colonial history. Gunfire is erupting from the trees all around them. Warriors are striking from both sides of the road. Many British soldiers fall in the first few minutes as bullets rip through the air. Officers are being picked off first because their uniforms shine the brightest through all the smoke. By all accounts, Washington should have been one of the first ones to die. Right here is where the legend is born. Confidently, Washington rides straight into the chaos, carrying orders from Braddock. He moves back and forth through the line. Riders on all sides of him are falling. His horse collapses directly underneath him. He just hops on another, and then that one falls. Both drop directly beneath him, and he simply climbs onto the next one he finds. When the shooting stops and the smoke clears, his coat has 4 bullet holes blown in the fabric. Another shot has left a huge hole in his hat, yet not a single bullet touched his body. People on the field swear he should have been hit at least a dozen times. They say he rode through the deadliest part of the fight as if nothing could touch him. Even Washington himself is stunned. Later, he writes in a letter that God must have spared him for a greater purpose. His troops are stunned. He becomes known as the man who cannot be killed. I guess they could have come up with a better name, but whatever. The story spreads across the colonies like wildfire. Washington now becomes not only known for his discipline and calm, but for something people can't fully explain. How does a man lose 2 horses, shred his coat, and still walk away without a single wound? But the strangest part of the entire legend comes almost 2 decades later. Years after the battle ends, Washington returns to the Ohio Valley, and news of his arrival travels quickly among the local nations. One chieftain in particular asks for a meeting. He tells Washington that he has waited many years for this very moment. The man explains that he had been commander at the Battle of the Monongahela. He says he watched Washington ride calmly through waves of musket fire. His warriors considered Washington the easiest target on the field by far. He says they fired at him again and again, 17 times. Every single shot missed. They took aim at his chest, at his head, at his back, but they could not touch him at all. The chieftain tells Washington that his best marksman came to believe that he himself was protected by a powerful spirit, something beyond human strength and comprehension. Something had refused to let him fall. Then the chieftain delivers the part of the story that generations later would become legend. He says that Washington is destined to become a mighty leader of his people. He explains that no bullet on that field could have killed him because his life was meant for something far greater. Straight from the mouth of the very man who once tried to kill him. Decades later, when Washington finally becomes the first president of the United States, the legend follows him all the way to the Capitol. George Washington became the bulletproof president. Like, follow, share, and subscribe for more stories that no longer reside in our history book, but they should.